Man, you need to buy yourself a gun. What? Gun? What? Like a handgun for personal protection. If somebody tries to mug you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a can? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. Oh. What? An automatic rifle and a lot of ammo. Gun? Yeah, gun.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Check for the cops in riot gear. Gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta drag them through the streets.
It is Tuesday. We are live. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv. My name is Michael.
And I am Nick. Michael, what's going on?
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm waiting for the cold front to come in, and I'm also seeing a little thing on the news here that's kind of disturbing to me.
Yep, I think I have an idea of what you're talking about. We had a active shooter situation at the Veterans Affairs Hospital at Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso in extreme western Texas.
Yeah, that's actually in the other time zone. Looks like the shooter is dead, and it's one psychiatrist dead. So this doesn't point to any sort of mass event. Of course, the media is going to turn it into an absolute horror and multiple shooter story, or multiple victims and all that kind of noise. This appears to be a soldier that needed some help.
Yeah,
as kind of what you're seeing.
Quite often is the case. You've seen in the last couple of years, you've seen quite a few soldiers really being done wrong by the Army at the behest of our government to not pay appropriate pensions for soldiers who are medically discharged. And what had been happening, especially up at Fort Lewis, was soldiers were getting less than the minimum required amount to be considered medically retired in terms of their disability ratings from doctors at Madigan Army Health Center. And this was a calculated move to deny a certain percentage of soldiers who were legitimately injured or suffering from a lot of depression and events stemming from their time downrange, that after so many people coming back from Fort Lewis were just being separated from the Army instead of receiving the pensions that they deserve, quite a few soldiers started writing to their congressmen and senators, and people at Madigan Army Health Center actually ended up getting relief from their commands due to the fact that this was a institutional policy to limit the amount of soldiers who were actually, receiving disability retirement benefits. So
now, let me ask you some questions about this, because, when we speak about anything that has to do with the military in almost every sense, the numbers are astronomical. Right, and so there's funding involved for this. Now, a soldier who, let's say, retires at the rank of E4, E5, maybe E6, with some sort of problem stemming from his time in service. what sort of benefits are they looking at money wise that would that's being denied to them? Like, what's the cost saving per soldiers that they're looking at?
Okay, well, you got to break it down a couple different ways first before you can actually get to a round ballpark number. Every soldier that stays in a certain amount of time, can considerably be retired medically just because of one event. So, a soldier who is a junior soldier goes downrange, gets blown up, probably significantly to the point where he can no longer continue service, can be considered medically retired if a competent medical authority, which is usually a board of Army physicians, which doesn't really sound competent to me, but they get together and they do a board type proceeding to say, hey, this is the actual injuries the soldier has. This is his prognosis for recovery. And if it's at a disabled rate, this is the amount of disabled, consideration that we're going to say he has. From there, that's actually just the decision to go ahead and retire him. And whatever rank that individual gets out at, that sets a certain amount of retirement pay based on the last 3 years of service for like a guy who gets out normally. The disability retirement, the medical retirement is done differently. Now, in addition to that, so whatever amount of money that the soldier would receive just from the Army in terms of a pension is separate from whatever disability benefits he would get from the Veterans Affairs Administration. So,
now let's be clear. These disability benefits, it's not like a prize. It's not, and it's never really a huge amount of money, is it?
No, and that's one of the things I think I remind everybody that was ever for Obamacare is that if you truly wanted, government funded health care, go visit a veteran in a VA hospital somewhere in your county. You see the care that they get. And, it's been in the news recently with the Veterans Affairs. General Erickson Shinseki got relieved, as he should have, for ineffective management of his department. And this is a guy who was a soldier and was basically asleep at the wheel while soldiers were receiving less than stellar medical care for their problems. So
this is highly disturbing, Nick, and as we see, this has resulted in this action tonight, and it appears that it's over. But you know that this is going to be used by the forces that work against our love here. That they're really going to push this on the anti-gun side.
Oh, certainly, and
I'll tell you.
This is one of those things that this is why nobody can carry a firearm on a federal installation. So once again, this was a gun-free zone, and you have 2 people dead. Okay.
Well, I understand that, but there's going to be this push for the mental health checks for all firearms owners. And as we've seen in the past, like recently in New York, a man who went and consulted a counselor for, I believe it was an insomnia issue, was it not?
Right. So basically, there was a gentleman who is a retired Navy veteran, and he was also a police detective in New York. He's basically suing the governor, Andrew Cuomo, and other state officials for what he feels is infringement on his Second Amendment right. He had gone through a period where he had not necessarily depression, but he had insomnia, and he sought treatment for that. Well, when the hospital did their discharge, and they wrote down on his record that it was insomnia with a secondary diagnosis of depression. Well, that with the new SAFE Act that went into effect last year in New York, that basically violated his right to own a firearm and nullified within the state his ability to do so. So,
well, this is really disturbing because anybody who goes to see a counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist is going to have the automatic diagnosis of depression.
Right. So doctors themselves are what we call mandatory reporters. There's a couple classes of folks that fall into mandatory reporting criteria. Usually, it's healthcare, child care providers, folks at school, things like that. And that's okay. That they have to mandatorily report things.
Now you're going to merge this with a veterans hospital style care, and personally, I can attest. I'm not a veteran. I don't have military service, but I worked medical field, and a veterans hospital was in my area, and I serviced many veterans hospitals. And I can tell you what, one time, this is an honest to God true story. I got a guy who was having a myocardial infarction. He's having a heart attack. I've actually started a line on him. I've started the MI protocols, and I've communicated with my base hospital, the people who control my license, basically, and had said that I wish to transport my patient to my base hospital, which was a university, but the patient wanted to go to the veterans hospital due to his healthcare status, his insurance, his status as a veteran, whatever. I did not feel comfortable taking him there, and my suspicions were confirmed once I arrived there after my base hospital gave me the okay to go, and everything's on tape and on record and everything, and my documentation is my key to survival in that situation. But I've got a line in the guy. I've got him, of course, on oxygen. I've already given him nitro and morphine, and I've got him, hooked up to a monitor. He's actively infarcting at the time, and of course, he's flat on the stretcher, and we're moving him in, and the nurse who was doing the triage admitting looks at me and says, "Put him in those chairs over there." And that some bitch that pissed me off, Nick. I'm sorry, and I pushed her right out of the way, and I popped that guy into a bed, and I called for the charge nurse. And I don't have a whole lot of love for the VA. Just I've seen poor care there. So this incident, while horrible to me, is not entirely shocking. Just because the veterans are getting poor care, and poor care is at the VA. I mean, right. They're practice doctors there, man.
Well, and here's the deal. So you have an institution that's fairly new in our government. I mean, the cabinet position for Veterans Affairs Administrator, or Secretary of the VA, that's I think maybe came about in the 70s after the Vietnam War. So it's a relatively new post within our government. But they had an institutional belief that veterans were a class of people who were accustomed to being told one thing, done another two, and they had a tendency to sit back and take it. So that was an institutional mindset within the VA. And this isn't meant to begrudge anybody that is a hardworking member of the VA that actively cares for our nation's veterans. Those people are indemnified from my comments. But for the schmucks who believe that, hey, this guy or girl gave 20 years or more or less of their life for our country, they're worthless to me, and they can just sit and die in the waiting room. Yeah, those people need to be gone from the VA.
Well, and see, the thing is that's a nurse there. She's not a military nurse. She's not a military employee. She's a civilian employee that just happens to work for the VA.
Right.
But the thing that got me is it's just another one. This guy, maybe this guy was well known to them. I'd never dealt with this guy before, and the transport time was only about 12 minutes, so I didn't really have time to get a full history on this man, as to into how many hospitals he normally goes to. I'm sure he wants to go to the VA, so he goes there. I hadn't had an entire history on this man, so. Just based on my experience, it was bad. Other people I know have had great experiences at the VA, but
I can count on no hands and no fingers or toes how many people I know that have had great experiences at a VA.
Well, that's a good thing because it's cold outside tonight, and I don't suggest you start taking off your shoes to count.
Yeah, well, we're at that time of year where the water gets hard in the morning, and it hurts your lungs to breathe, but. I'll tell you what, finishing up on this VA thing, I think what this is indicative of the sorry state of affairs that is still going on at the Veterans Administration. Obviously, this is a person who needed help, probably wasn't getting it, and when you're already at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to what your government thinks your healthcare options are. What more did this guy probably think to himself that he had to lose? Without sight unseen, without knowing anything about this case, it's the narrative that goes on every time. It's a soldier who was seeking care, or a former soldier who was seeking care, had been given the runaround, and was at his wit's end and didn't have anywhere else to go. We've seen this happen, numerous times, and the conversation is quickly turned away from what is the state of our care that we are providing, and instead it's put squarely on if this guy didn't have a gun, this would have never happened. Who knows? Who knows? But I'll tell you this, when there was the Ukrainian gentleman in New York City going on the subway, stabbing and killing 8 people with a kitchen knife, Mayor Bloomberg didn't get mayors against illegal kitchen knives together. So.
Oh no, she doesn't have the same ring now, does it?
Yeah.
Consider, it's all the word game, right? The destruction of language is almost complete.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from the fact that kids aren't being, taught cursive in school anymore, I'm surprised there's not a master's course in emojis.
Yeah. Well, if you've got in Oakland, you can get a foreign language credit for oh man, it kills me. It kills me to get Ebonics and get that on a high school diploma. Yeah.
You is graduate.
Yeah. So, that's one of the things. It's a sad state of affairs when we have our veterans taking their own lives and killing other people in the process. But I think that's indicative. We have a long way to go in order to get our veterans the care that they need and get them the help that we owe them and is right to provide.
I think you don't fall with that. I think we need to add something to this. I think we need to stop making veterans in this condition, because the amount of money that is being denied to these guys is totally being turned around and given to like large corporations, and they're not doing the right thing with it. So
yeah,
it's a great big vicious ball right here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You got any information on those redacted 28 pages of the 9/11 report? You see anything about that?
I certainly don't. 9/11 is in the past, man. It distracts from the now.
That's right. Live in the now.
Yeah, but keeping on the military side, let's talk about the Army's open competition for a replacement service pistol.
This is an interesting topic, and I'm actually going to have to give props to the Army on this one. I think they did the right thing.
So, as many of our listeners know, the U.S. Army uses the model M9 Beretta 9mm, which is the military equivalent of the civilian 92 series pistol.
Yeah, the 92 FS in particular.
Correct.
There's several models along the 92 line, but the military version is the exact same thing as the 92 FS.
Right. So basically, the U.S. Army went from the tried and true M1911 45 caliber pistol, and in the 80s went ahead and switched over to the M9 made by Beretta of Italy. There's
that's the reason why they did that. We did that for a standardization of ammunition with our NATO allies, and we also had a bunch of Air Force bases that needed to continue to be leased in Italy.
Yeah, in perpetuity is. Yeah, and it wasn't only just the Air Force bases, because we did need a launching platform for the Southern European Task Force, which is in Vicenza, Italy, commonly referred to as U.S. Army Africa or the 173rd Airborne Infantry Brigade.
The fighting Ebola killers.
Yeah, so you have different U.S. Army posts in Italy. You have them in Pisa, you have them in Vicenza, and then you also have the newest one, which is called Caserma del Din, which was basically created to make sure that the U.S. Army wasn't pissing folks off near the Caserma Ederle location, which is in a very, very expensive part of town. And then, like I said, you had the folks that were at Aviano Air Base, which is one of the former locations where we used to have nuclear arms stored.
So, and I think they launched the U-2s from there and stealths later on. Yeah. And I think that's the base that was in contention at the time that the pistol contract was coming up.
Yeah.
And I personally believe, and a lot of people also, who've done any sort of research on this, believe that's exactly what happened, that the military gave them gave Beretta the contract for international relations on this base. So in that, the Beretta 92 itself is a serviceable pistol as Beretta sells it. Now, in the classic Army line of thinking, cheaper is better. So they took some great features from the Beretta, such as the magazine, which is made by an Italian company that subcontracts to them, Medgar, which is a wonderful company. If you have a quality pistol and your magazines are getting old, look to Medgar. There is probably a 70% chance that if you have a European-made pistol, that's going to be the original manufacturer for it. So Medgar magazines are wonderful. Well, the Army did not use Medgar magazines, did they?
No, they
they're like from OK and Checkmate and Adventureland and just whoever could make this same bent metal and spring box.
That's it. Yeah.
Cheap. And they went from having a sand-resistant finish, which is naturally what comes on the Beretta magazine stock, to a phosphate finish, which led to problems with the pistol.
Yeah, you've anybody who's ever had to do anything with a phosphate coating knows that when it creates the friction just based on the contact with metal, it smells like it's burning and it doesn't fit the way that it should.
Well, it's a rough surface going against something that doesn't necessarily need a rough surface. The phosphate finish or even the Parkerized finish shouldn't be parts that rub together.
Right.
And I believe that combined with the military use of the 125 grain ball ammo and the fact that these pistols, it's not your pistol. You don't get it issued to you when you come into the Army, and then you take it with you wherever you go. It gets issued to you for the day, and it goes back into a box, and then tomorrow somebody gets that one, and God knows how it gets treated in that time.
Oh, certainly, and that's one of the things that anytime a soldier is on the range with a officer who is not combat arms, and you see how that pistol is handled, you shudder to think about the value of that when it gets sold to the third world country that inevitably it will end up in. Well,
this shows that cheaper isn't always better. But now this new Beretta coming in, this 93 M9A3, which is the new Beretta pistol, seems to meet a lot of the deficiencies that were reported by other users. And actually, I bet you that almost all the deficiencies could be rectified if you started using a heavier ball ammo. I know you're not allowed to use hollow points, but a heavier ball ammo would probably do the trick.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point about why the Army went to the 92 and the M9 in general, as opposed to the 45 caliber. 45 caliber, has a little bit of recoil, and in less strong hands, you may not be able to follow up with a second aim shot, or you may not be able to stay on target.
Well, and also the 1911 is a decently sized pistol, and somebody with small hands, perhaps a woman or a man with smaller hands, wouldn't be able to actually access the grip safety correctly and aim at the same time. They'd have problems working the safety on it. They'd have problems working the slide stop. It's a larger framed pistol for a larger bullet, a much larger bullet.
Right. So when the Army decided to take that 45 caliber out of the inventory and replace it with the M9, I believe it was to give a expanding officer corps, which was now largely gender integrated, the most capable type of pistol to be used by both men and women.
Which is odd, because the 92 is a design that I believe first came about in 1972 or 1976. I'm not exactly sure. It's one of those 2 years. But it's a large pistol in itself. I mean, it's a full size. It's a full size.
Yeah, this is not a compact carry pistol. This is a full size service pistol. And when you talk about Beretta having the leg up on the competition, of course they have the leg up on the competition, because they've been the sole service pistol for over 30 years. So 3 decades of service and You think how long was the 45 in the U.S. Army's active inventory?
What did it come in? It came in right after the Filipino insurrection. What year was that?
Yeah, you're talking the 1890s right there.
Yeah, so, well, 45 caliber come in, then 45 ACP comes in what, 1911 is the model year, 1915 is the first year of service, is that right?
Yeah, something like that. But you would figure based on nearly 70 plus years of active service, and there was no need to change the 45 in any way, shape, or form. 3 decades after initial issue, the Army says this ain't working out. So, Beretta has the advantage of, number one, already having the contract. Number two, having the company's headquarters in Italy, which,
the company has actually now moved to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and these pistols being produced for the military will be an American-made product.
Right.
They will be produced in Gatlinburg, Tennessee,
which is actually required by law. So when you think about it, though, at the original outset, we needed to have our U.S. interests in terms of basing rights, continued in Italy. The U.S. Army has brought in other pistols into the inventory even before the M9 has been phased out. We have the SIG M11, so it's still
which is just a SIG 226.
Sure, like I said, same 9mm shoots the same ammo. But here's the rub. I look at this in the same light as I look at the Army's previous competition to replace the M4 series rifle with a new
M4 series rifle.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened. You have candidates such as the Heckler and Koch 416. A piston operated action instead of the direct impingement. You have from the Ruger SR 556. And yet somehow the Army decides in the middle of the competition that even though Colt has failed every category or had a failure on their weapon system in every category prior to any of the other candidates, we're just going to go ahead and cancel the competition and keep going with Colt. So
that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
I tell you,
at least in this case, with the M9A3, Beretta has changed it up significantly.
Visually, it is a different pistol.
In operation, it's also a different pistol. But there's enough of the visual changes that actually transfer to physical changes that actually would help the operator. One of the things is it's got basically what you would call the Vertec grip. Beretta had a series of pistols that eliminated the little swell at the back of the grip, a palm swell, and now it's a flat, and it's got a wraparound rubber grip.
Right.
That's going to make it a little bit easier for people with smaller hands, and it's not going to do enough to make it undersized for somebody with already massive hands.
Well, let me go ahead and give our loyal listeners a rundown of basically what the M9A3 brings as opposed to the M9. So the new features are that it's got a threaded barrel for attaching whatever you want to attach to the end of a pistol barrel. The night sights, which are tritium, the front sight is removable. You've got a Picatinny rail accessory, so an M19 13 mil standard rail, a recontoured safety selector, and then you also have a grip that is wraparound, and it's got checkering, so it basically improves the ability of the soldier to maintain.
And it's just significantly smaller grip than the previous 92. And once again, the magazines work, even though they're not the greatest in the sandbox. They do work at home in the street.
And this is it. The manufacturer says that the wraparound grip cover it increases the actual grip size because you got more surface area. But then again, it's got the reversible magazine release. A beveled magazine well, so you don't have any rough edges catching on anything. And then the magazine will be 17 rounds capable as opposed to 15. And then, of course, it comes with custom sand or earth tone Cerakote finishing.
I think the sand and earth tone is quite the forgiving touch to it. That's really what the military needs.
Well, if that says anything, that means we're going to stay in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, where the version of TNA is toes and ankles.
Yeah, boy, Burka party tonight.
Woohoo! So that's one of the things that I thought was real interesting. I'm interested in a sense to see if this actually goes the distance. If there is a competition to speak of, I would be surprised if this M9A3 is not just hands down. They cancel the competition and just go with this.
I believe that's exactly what's going to happen because as we know right now, currently the military is still in the middle of a contract for 150,000 units of the M9.
Right.
And they are able to produce what the next contract calls for, which is 750,000 pistols.
Yeah,
they are able to produce that within the time frame needed.
Yeah, so
they can actually deliver half of that
to purchase
within 6 months, I think.
Yeah. So the Army says that they plan to purchase 287,000 pistols, while other services may purchase as many as 212,000. So you're looking at roughly half a million pistols.
Right.
And
wow. I had seen other numbers that had said 750,000 would be what an entire military contract would be.
That's the entire contract, and then that's a draft. Like I said, across all services, 500,000. And when you look at it, that would effectively be one pistol for every active duty service member, and then some, because our active duty end strength in the Army is we're sitting at 460,000, 470,000 active duty soldiers. So, and we don't, of course, outfit every soldier with a service pistol. Usually officers and senior non-commissioned officers and certain members of our combat arms who work in vehicles like tanks or Bradleys and, certain...
Let me ask you just a kind of maybe off-the-wall question here. What would somebody who works in a prison carry, a military prison carry?
They're going to be carrying a nightstick and a baton. Because number one, you don't put somebody who is incarcerated in an area where they can
contact of a firearm. I realize that, but I mean there are weapons.
Yeah, and there's been within the military, we say the disciplinary barracks is another word for prisons. They are employing less lethal munitions, so beanbag bullets, things like that. A lot of taser type stuff. Fortunately, the only time I've ever been to a detention facility is to drop people off. I don't plan on getting dropped off myself.
That's a good plan. That is a very good plan. That will keep your family happy.
That'll keep my anal sanity happy. That's for
that's one of the more important things that perhaps we've discussed too much on this show.
Yep. So that's one of the things. So I mean, I like I said, I'm interested to see if other companies are even willing to put forth a candidate in this competition. Whether it happens or not, I'm very skeptical. And I'm not a fan of the Beretta 92. I don't like it. I think we fire an ineffective round. And it lacks,
I would definitely agree.
It lacks the stopping power, and I think that puts our soldiers at risk. But then again, I look at what it is. It's a product of its times, and I think that our recent history shows that I think the time has come to switch from the 9mm and go back to the 45. I truly and honestly believe
you're going to have to convince a whole bunch of NATO people.
Well, that's the thing. I got it. NATO standardization. Trust me, I was a very proud card-carrying member of NATO, so I know my international brethren. A lot of them share my same opinion because you have new NATO nations such as Croatia, where they make Springfield Armory. So,
well, I'll tell you what. I've seen a Croatian pistol that they've been selling recently, and it's a PPV-9, and it's actually a fairly interesting pistol. It's almost it looks like it's a copy a high power lower and a Mauser P8 upper.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, Mauser P9 upper.
You mean Mauser,
It's
or you're talking Heckler and Koch?
No. I'm talking old. I'm talking World War II Mauser, and it's fairly interesting. And I've seen those for sale anywhere between $199 and $300. The only thing is I think you're only going to get the one magazine with that. But if you're looking at something that's maybe just to put in the nightstand, it's a military pistol. It's the magazines are going to be hard to come by.
Yeah, certainly. So if you got a 1911 out there, hold on to it.
Yeah, I would definitely hold on to it. It's those things they're not coming down in price if it's a good American brand. There's a lot of import 1911s out there. Recently, the Philippines have always been a powerhouse for 1911s, but recently there's been a bunch of Turkish imports, and one of the companies is Tizas, and they make a very, very quality GI copy, and it comes in at I think it was $329 or something like that, $359.
Right.
But that's not got the same panache that you do when you get the little pony on the side or something.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that's the thing. Everybody pays for the brand.
Yeah, that pony costs a lot of money.
It does, and then you can actually look at ARs. You've got a nice advertising spot just right there on either side of the magazine well, and it's weird how certain things that look like a Punisher or a Spider end up costing more than something that's slick or has the Palmetto State Armory.
I was almost looking forward to the decline of the zombie invasion of products right before the whole rush in 2012, just because there were so many small pocket pistols out there that were in ugly electric vomit green that said Zombie Slayer on it, and I thought, man, those are the perfect candidates for Cerakoting. Get that thing at a discount, and then take that thing and go get it just Cerakoted black.
Exactly, yeah, or Desert Tan.
Or Desert Tan, or flat dark earth, or Coyote Brown. It's jeez.
Whatever
I think that color craze really came about with the customization of AR-15s.
Well, yeah, and that's why AR-15s are Lego sets for adults.
Yeah, they're male Barbies is what they are.
Yeah.
Right,
so one of the things that I remember from my time overseas was just being exposed to a whole nother class of long gun works of art. There's just no other way to say it. I'm talking, rifles and shotguns with artwork carved into the stock. Things that maybe you only see on high-end rifles in the States that have engraved plates underneath the actions, whereas in Germany and Czech Republic and Poland to a lesser extent, but you'll see actual artwork carved into the stock, and it's a relief scene of say a red stag in the forest bugling, or wild boar running, things like that. And it got me thinking. One of the things that I really regret not picking up over there and bringing back was a good combination shotgun rifle. In Germany, that's called a Bockbuchsflinte, so over-under rifle shotgun. And
they have such a way with words.
They do, and that's all one word, by the way. So,
so I got to ask you a German question since you've been there. Is birth control in Germany really called anti-baby pillen?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry. Continue, please.
Okay. So, one of the things that I like I said, I really regretted not picking up was an over/under combination gun, and almost every town has a rifle maker. That's probably got a pretty good reputation for being able to put a rifle together just from a barrel blank, custom stock that he cut himself, and an action that he tooled on a machine. But you get some of these manufacturers like Merkel or Heim or even Mauser now, they used to put out some great works of art. And then, World War II happened in, 1945 when the Americans came in from the West and the Russians came in from the East. There was kind of a decline of so many years where those rifles and shotgun combos were not available. But over time, as the Americans started to give up control of the southern and western portions of Germany, and the British gave up control of the northern regions, and the French gave up control of the west, these guns started making their way back into the civilian population, and the master rifle makers, they started really taking care of these rifles and getting them up to snuff, where these things can be 80, 90 years old. And they fire like nobody's business. They are accurate. They fire true. And the most common thing is something that's called a Bergstützen, and so that's it's a smaller caliber. So something in the 6.5 millimeter under a 12 gauge. So you got a 12 gauge barrel, a 6.5 by 55, and that is enough for fox with the you shoot fox with the 12 gauge, and then you shoot a deer with the 6.5.
So if you're going to have one of these in an American Schützenbocken, whatever the hell you just called it, you would have it, say, a 12 gauge with a 308 or 30-06 under it,
exactly,
or a 20 gauge with a 223.
Exactly.
Or a 5.56.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do. And there's various gun trader sites out there. I happened to see one the other day that I contacted the individual about, and Lord, if I had $700, I'd have me a new Baikal 12 gauge under a 30-06 barrel. I would have had that in a hot minute. So
you need some attractive financing.
I do. I need either that or I need better record keeping.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, that kind of idea brings to mind, there was a military rifle, the M6, that was, I believe it was a 14-inch barrel, and it had a 410 shotgun shell and a 22 Hornet.
Right.
And they've also made that in a civilian version, with the 18.5-inch barrel for the shotgun, which also gives you the 18.5-inch barrel for the rifle, because they don't make one barrel shorter. They've made that in 22 long rifle and in 22 Hornet with the 410, and that's usually it's got a big trigger on it. It's not a finger trigger. It's a big old hand squeeze lever on it, and it's designed for somebody to use with gloves on, or somebody with an injured hand. And that's a pretty interesting rifle. They're quite pricey. But then we were speaking earlier, and you mentioned the Henry survival rifle, which is completely different than the AR-6 survival rifle.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. You have a combo gun such as the AR-6, and the M or whatever it is from Henry's. I think it's called the Henry survival rifle. It's completely different. There is no 410 with it. I think the Henry survival rifle is 22 long rifle.
That's right. Now, the Henry survival rifle isn't an innovation by Henry by any means. This is a long-standing design. I think it was actually an Armalite design that was sold to Charter Arms, and then Charter Arms ended up making several significant changes to it in the interest of cost saving, and produced basically a totally different rifle. I think the Charter Arms AR-7 really gets its fame from the use in the James Bond movie, where he skis and then takes the rifle out and assembles it really quick, and he shoots down a helicopter or something with it.
Yeah, and like I said,
wicked 22 long rifle bullets.
Yeah. So the M6 Scout is the rifle that has the squeeze type trigger,
and that is a significant price difference over the Henry Survivor rifle.
Yeah, and that M6 is it's a 22 Hornet and 410. So
right. But it is also available in 22 long rifle and 410.
Right. So that's the combination gun. You've got utility. I personally have never hunted with a 410. I'm sure they're excellent for small birds, maybe rabbit. 12 .22 will take down, small game as well. So, something that's not going to weigh a ton, and then in addition to that, the ammunition is not going to weigh a ton. How much?
And 410 is deceptive because while the ammunition itself doesn't weigh a ton, it does have significant power. It doesn't have significant long range. It's got decent power up close, but the ammunition is completely overpriced. A box of 25 birdshot at 410 will run you $8 or $9, whereas a box of 25 12-gauge shells in the similar loading will be $4 or $5. I don't know why that is.
Well, and then when you look at the cost of, we'll just say the Henry survival rifle, which is also called their AR-7, you're looking anywhere from $300 to $350. So depending upon where you get it, that's a 22 long rifle, and the utility there is that, number one, you can store everything, from the action back in the stock, and
and when it's closed up, it is watertight and it does float and all that.
Exactly. So I recommend putting a rope on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know. I've used some of them before. I've used them in actually from the Charter Arms version. The Henry version is exactly the same. They haven't changed anything really, other than who makes it, the stampings on the side. I wasn't really impressed with it. Back in my wild youth, I had a friend who had one, and it was a really nice rifle. He got it brand new, and within about 1,500 rounds, that rifle was not functioning right, and it wasn't something that could be remedied by cleaning.
Right.
And I don't know, I just thought that was quite a high price to pay for something that just was, in the end, practically disposable.
Right. Well, you can go back the other way and go with the Springfield M6 Scout. That's, you can get it in a variety of chamberings. You can get it 22 long rifle, 410. You can get a 45 Colt. Whatever floats your boat. And that's going to run you anywhere from $650 all the way up to $800, I think. Depending upon what place you go through and what your FFL fees and all. But I would probably want something that's the 22 long rifle and 410. At a minimum, I think that's what I would want.
Well, I'm at a point where I've actually kind of moved out of 410. I recently just got rid of my last one, so I don't.
An era.
Kind of. We'll mark that on the calendar or something. The day that I said, no, I do not need to buy any more different kinds of shells. I don't know. I didn't shoot the 410 enough, and if I don't have a Taurus Judge anymore, which was really the ultimate reason to have a 410, there really wasn't a whole lot of use for them for me.
Right.
It just kind of got in the way, and well, that's another thing I got to pack when the hurricane comes.
Yeah. And when you look at it, for those people who are fortunate enough to not have to go outside of the country and feel the restrictions of not being able to ship ammo back home, when you do your purchasing and you do your stocking up, ammo starts to weigh a little bit when you get it by the pallet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you. You can go ahead and put on a load-bearing vest and kind of load up all the extra pockets full of ammunition you got, and then try and throw a backpack with 1,000 rounds in it, and yeah, that's not extra light.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I look at the ammo cans that I have in my house, I got a picture from my wife today that showed some basically some cleaning up. We've been here in my location for about 6 months now. We're still unpacking boxes, so that's a testament to how busy our weekends get. But I did get a photo from my wife, and she managed somehow to lift 2 of my completely full ammo boxes and put it up on an upper shelf. I was very impressed.
Well, I just got to ask what she's doing out of the kitchen.
Well, yeah, I don't think you want to go there. Yeah. For my sanity, if nothing else, I don't think you want to go there.
All right. So with the price of that Henry coming in at I believe you said it was $350.
Yeah, anywhere between 300 $350, depending upon who you.
I think at that price range, I'd be more inclined to tell somebody to go get themselves a Ruger 1022 or a Marlin Model 60. Ruger 1022, if you want to be the guy who goes out and ouslasts to buy magazines. Marlin Model 60, if you just want to have a rifle to go out and plink and not have to put a whole lot of extra money in it.
Right.
Ruger 1022 with magazines happens to be my favorite. I'm sorry, Ruger 1022 is the gold standard of 22 rifles.
Well, and that's one of the things, talk about the difference between the full length 1022 vice the carbine 1022.
Okay, well, you've got a couple different barrel lengths in Ruger 1022 currently. Now, in the past, this is a model of rifle that's been made since, 1970 something?
Yeah, before my time.
Right. So, they've had many, many different iterations of this rifle, but usually for the American market, the rifle is going to be have a barrel anywhere between 16 and a half inches long out to about 22 inches long. And I happen to be a fan of the 16-inch barrel version. I really like them. They're compact. 16 inches on the barrel gives me enough velocity to hit anything at the range that I normally shoot a 22 at.
Okay. Well, what about the barrel band that I hear so much about? Some people love it, some people don't. I happen to know that anytime you put a metal band around the barrel, you're starting to screw with accuracy.
I have no problem with the barrel band. The barrel band actually keeps the end of the 1022 stuck in the stock.
Okay, so then the barrel itself would not be glass bedded or pillar bedded, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Straight out of the box, these things run anywhere between $175 for the bare bones entry if you can get it on sale at Walmart or your big box sporting goods store near Christmas, to probably about $225 normal time pricing, all the way up to, depends on how tactical and how cool you want your rifle to be, straight out of the box. I've seen models of 1022s that go for $350, $400 straight out of the box.
Well, yeah, and then you could go up to the I think they called it the international version, which was the full.
I like the international version.
Yeah.
Now, that is not tactical. That is a very, very classy looking rifle.
That is, and that's actually what we would call a Stutzen in Germany. That's those pieces of artwork rifles that I was talking about. Right. Those are the full length wood stock.
Similar to that, and that full length Mannlicher style stock on it. It's they only made a limited run of those.
Yeah, and I tell you what, if I see one available in this year, I think I will probably pick one up. I have the 122 caliber rifle that you gave me, the Daisy.
That Daisy's kind of neat, and I kind of meant for your kiddies to use that.
Well, and that's what it'll be for. But like I said, without a place to shoot out here, it's taking its place along the others inside the safe. So,
right.
That will be one of the ones that either my
son or box, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It has it up here. I've got it right here in the closet. So
should put that thing up online.
Oh well, maybe. Maybe we get some extra cash, and I can turn around and see if I can make another $600 to get the over under.
You're not going to make $600 off a Daisy BB rifle. I think or the 22 rifle. I think if you've got the box and everything's nice, I'll bet you'd be able to get about $225 out of it. If for somebody who's looking for that, you're not going to get it from anybody who wants to shoot it. Yeah.
And like I said, that's the benefit of having the open market and testing the waters and not needing to sell it, but selling it if you can. Which kind of brings up our pet peeves of the week. I know that you had one about private person sales. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Oh, I've got so many about private person sales. Which one was my problem about that?
How they caveat their sale right up front.
Oh, yeah. This is a problem I'm seeing. Not necessarily a problem, but these are people I'm choosing to not deal with, and it all has to do with how people are presenting themselves online.
So do tell.
Well, I don't know if we've got enough time to get into it because we're getting near and we still got to run.
Go ahead, give us the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, well, don't deal with flat bills. Don't deal with guys who are throwing gang signs in their profile. If they got a tattoo on their face, they're probably not the guy you want to sell a handgun to.
What about in their listings when they do something online?
Well, it depends on which type of forum you're talking about.
So if a seller goes online and says, I paid this much, so I expect to get this much. Does that kind of stuff get your goat?
Absolutely, and but I'm also in the opinion that it is your item, and this is a free market, and you are free to price your item at whatever you wish to. And it also gives me the freedom to say you are a jackass. There is no way I'm giving you $450 for your high point.
Yeah.
I don't care if you did, bedazzle the side of it.
Yeah, crazy. One of my pet peeves now is folks that they have a cash price and they have a trade price, and the trade price is not commensurate with the cash price. Because
that has to do with the value seekers, because you're going to put that cash price up because somebody's going to say, well, I'll give you half of what you're asking for it directly first, straight up.
Yeah, and I think that those people automatically get they get discounted, and nobody probably even answers that email.
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of screaming when it's rapid interactions.
Yeah.
When it's in a forum where you can actually see, people, when it's an open bidding forum, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right, 4 rules of gun safety, real quick.
All right, first rule.
Every firearm is loaded until you visually and physically inspect it and make it unloaded. Rule number 2, do not point that firearm at anything you wish to destroy. Be aware of where your muzzle is pointed. Rule number 3, be aware of what your target is, what is beyond your target at all times. And rule number 4, keep that booger hook off the bang switch until you are ready to discharge the weapon. That's all we got to say on that tonight.
That's it. And make sure that you teach your youngins those 4 rules, and you start it young and you reiterate it often.
I agree with that, man. I mean, I ain't a fan of the NRA by any means, but I do think that Eddie the Eagle was a good thing.
Oh yeah. Just like McGruff the crime dog. You know what I mean? You got
McGruff arrested for like child porn or something like that.
It wasn't McGruff. It was the guy portraying McGruff. That's like saying Elmo's a child molester. It's the guy who's voicing him is.
Well, that takes all the fun out of it then.
Yeah, it's the sign of the times when Children's Television Workshop becomes the Communist Television Workshop.
Well, I think it was always working that way, but hey, at least most of us, learn to count with the count. 1, a 2, a 3. Where's my lightning bolt?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, Michael, I wanted to go ahead and give a big thanks to Jules and UCY TV. It's a great platform. It gives us an opportunity to get an hour on just any topic that we choose to talk about. Most often firearms and our love of firearms and all things shooting. And I want to say thanks to our listeners, our loyal followers who are out there every week and looking forward to our show. So thanks a lot, guys. We appreciate being live and getting the opportunity to say the things we like.
That was really nice. I agree with you. Thanks to Jules and UCY for the platform. Everybody, hey, pass it on. If you got somebody out there who might like this, might find it interesting, let them know we're on, we might even start taking calls again here.
Yeah, we just got to make sure they're actually for this show and not for the show that comes on.
Please keep all calls to PrimerTime on the subject.
There we go. So we're hitting our bumper music. Michael, it's great to talk to you. I want to give a big shout out.
Nick, I enjoyed it. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to my buddy Chris. Hopefully we'll get him on here in one of these coming weeks.
That's what we're looking forward to. All right, everybody out there, do what the song says. Buy a gun, buy some ammo, buy some magazines. Get out there and use them. It's a